Welcome to Inside Judicial Watch. I'm your host, Bruce Schlesman. With me today, we have Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton, who's here to talk about some key updates going on at Judicial Watch. Tom, thanks so much for coming by.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So my first question is just going to be really basic, just to get into things here. So Judicial Watch has a lot of stuff that we've been going over this year. And I guess what is the most important thing that in your opinion, that Judicial Watch has done so far this year?
Well, we've been in the forefront of exposing a deep state conspiracy against President Trump. I know folks have gotten off track in terms of the concerns about the spying as a result of all the election noise and all that. But that scandal hasn't gone away, and it was Judicial Watch who exposed the FISA warrants, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act warrants, the ones that had been for the first time in history publicized as a result of Judicial Watch and other Freedom of Information Act litigation. And that showed that the courts were misled as part of the Obama effort to spy on President Trump's team. And later it was actually Rod Rosenstein who also signed off on one of the warrants. So it extended in even to the Trump administration, this abuse. And Robert Mueller benefited from that spying operation as well. So we're now waiting for the rest of that spy warrant to be released or declassified, because we understand, based on those who have seen it, that it's even worse in terms of other scandals showing that the government was misleading the courts in order to get this spy warrant authority. And related to that, we've got these major documents showing that Christopher Steele, who worked for Hillary Clinton, worked for Fusion GPS worked for Hillary Clinton through Fusion GPS, who was paid off by a cutout firm for the Clinton campaign, a law firm. So this Christopher Steele character, foreign spy, or used to be a spy, but probably still had connections to the intelligence apparatus in the UK, he was working with the FBI. Met with them 13 times, 11 of those times he was paid in 2016. So no one else got that, Judicial Watch got it. And we have dozens of lawsuits, well over 30 plus lawsuits, investigating these connections between the deep state effort to overturn the election and overthrow the presidency.
Wow, and it's tough almost remembering all that stuff just happened just this year with the news cycle just moving so fast as it does. So do you think we're going to get that information you were talking about soon with the spy investigation and Rod Rosenstein? Do you think that comes about soon?
Yeah, I think the president ultimately is going to declassify that material. He initially was just going to do it on his own. But deep state representatives came in and said, oh no, the sky will fall if you declassify this. And the president said, okay, well, I'll let the IG at the Justice Department figure out whether it's appropriate to declassify this as a double backstop as to whether he can frankly trust the FBI and DOJ to be forthright as to the impact on national security as a result of you declassifying this. To me, that was a needless delay. I think he should just declassify the material because what's going to happen is the Democrats are taking control of the House, and so the whole thing's going to come up again. So the sooner we get information about what really went on, the better, because the politicians are going to come back into town and try to distract from the truth.
So with Rod Rosenstein, what happened with that whole thing? It kind of sounded like he was going to be fired, and then he wasn't, and now we're kind of in this limbo. So do you think he's fired soon, or do you think he's going to stay around for the long haul?
I don't know what's going on. For those of you who didn't track it, this is a big story. But about a month or so ago now, 2 months ago, the New York Times reported that Rod Rosenstein, who was Deputy Attorney General, remember Sessions had recused himself. Mm-hmm. So he's running the show on a lot of this Russia-related material investigations, and he's meeting with the acting FBI director, Andrew McCabe, who since has been fired for misconduct. And they're in a meeting with senior staff, and Rod Rosenstein is talking about recording the president because Comey had just been fired. Now, Rosenstein says he was joking, wearing a wire into the Oval Office. It was all a joke. I don't know how many jokes occur where the acting head of the FBI and essentially his boss at the Justice Department are joking about recording the president. But he also talked about invoking the 25th Amendment, which is the process for removing the president. Now, that didn't happen, but no one say he joked about that. And thirdly, he talked about getting a special counsel appointed.
Yeah.
So out of three things he talked about, the special counsel was appointed as a result of that meeting. A meeting where they were really figuring out ways to overthrow the president. And if the president's comfortable with having Rod Rosenstein in as the number 2 at the Justice Department, I guess that's his prerogative. I think probably one solution he has in his head was he removed Jeff Sessions, so he has someone that he's more comfortable with, at least as acting Attorney General, Matthew Whitaker.
Okay. So you think Sessions being removed was his response to the Rosenstein, or?
I think it might have been an elegant solution to the Rosenstein issue, so he didn't have to fire both Sessions and Rosenstein at the same time. And now Whitaker is overseeing the Mueller investigation.
Okay.
Now, I think it should be shut down. It should be shut down for constitutional reasons, for abusive reasons, and the basic issue is the Justice Department can't be investigating the president for his official conduct. I mean, it doesn't make any constitutional sense to me. Now, whether Whitaker is going to have the backbone to do this, I don't know. But they're nervous he will do it. That's why you're hearing noises out of the Senate and the House that they may pass a bill to try to protect Mueller from being fired, which would be an unconstitutional abomination on top of the abomination of the harassing Mueller investigation.
So you mentioned shutting down the Mueller operation and Mueller a little bit and the special counsel and that sort of thing, and now Whitaker's overseeing it all. Do you mind talking a little bit about what you expect from what happens now that Whitaker's in charge? Things are seeming to change, but do you think they will? What happens to the Mueller investigation?
Well, the X factor in all this is what the president's going to do, because he does things that politicians ordinarily don't do, like he fired Comey.
Yeah.
He removed Jeff Sessions, despite all the screaming that took place as a result of his doing it and the threats against him to stop him from doing it. He did it anyway. But typically, at the Justice Department, it's a bad idea, I guess, for purposes of investing to rely on past performance to figure out if something is going to do well in the future, if you're buying a stock or a mutual fund or something like that. But in politics, past performance is a pretty good indication of future performance, especially in the deep state bureaucracies. So my guess is the Mueller investigation will continue to move along, absent extraordinary intervention by the president, and it will continue to harass the president, his family, and his associates. And I don't think Whitaker is going to restrain it as much as people might think he might have, because inertia is a great friend to the bureaucracy.
That's all very concerning to hear. Do you think we've covered a lot of different topics, from like Hillary Clinton this year to the FISA stuff to what we were just talking about with the Mueller investigation. A lot of people were doing terrible things and kind of getting away with it. Do you think some of these people, like Hillary Clinton or Holder with Fast and Furious, or Lerner with the IRS scandal, do you think these people eventually get held accountable?
Well, they don't get held accountable in the way people want them to be held accountable in terms of prosecutions and such. I do think Hillary Clinton eventually can be prosecuted, but that's going to require a much braver attitude on the part of the Justice Department, people like Matt Whitaker, than has previously been shown. I mean, one of the outrages about what's been going on in the Justice Department the last 2 years is that they've really endorsed or ratified by silence what went on with Comey and Attorney General Lynch in that sham investigation of the Clinton email issue. Do they think, this current Justice Department, this FBI director, that Hillary Clinton did nothing wrong? Do they agree with Comey that it shouldn't have been prosecuted and couldn't have been prosecuted? That it wasn't a violation of law? They haven't said one way or another, and isn't that both interesting and upsetting at the same time?
Very interesting, yeah. So
what we're going to do is keep on getting the records out, and hopefully contribute to the public education, and maybe there'll be more pressure on the Justice Department to do the right thing because Judicial Watch is doing all the heavy lifting.
Last week we talked about the Hillary Clinton hearing that just happened. Do you want to walk us through a little bit about on your take with everything that went down in that hearing and kind of that stuff going forward, because she has to answer those two questions now, according to that hearing?
Yeah, there was a big hearing last week before Judge Emmett Sullivan. It went on about an hour and a half, and then we had to wait for Judge Sullivan to compose his ruling. There were 8 lawyers on the other side, and I was there as the client, representing Judicial Watch, and our attorney, Mike Bekesha, who you talked to about this case as well, represented Judicial Watch quite ably in this. We're trying to get Hillary Clinton to answer some basic questions under oath in writing. We've already been granted the ability to get some of that information from her back in 2016. She refused to answer some key questions, so we were in court fighting about that. And it was, we did win in the sense that the real big question we had for her was, tell us about the Clinton email system, how it was created, why it was created, who did it, the basic details. And she didn't want to answer that. And so we won. And now she'll have to answer that within 30 days. I guess the 30 days runs the middle of next month. But what was extraordinary about that hearing, it's one thing to have Hillary Clinton's lawyers come in and argue that she shouldn't have to answer these basic questions. It's another thing to see the State Department, represented by Justice Department attorneys, tell the court that we shouldn't be able to get additional information, basic information about how her email system was set up and run. So, as I said earlier, it is interesting and frustrating and outrageous that this Justice Department and State Department are still protecting and defending Hillary Clinton. And I've made this point in other places, and at the same time, President Trump is trying to figure out how to answer dozens of questions, 24 questions given to him by the Justice Department about a crackpot conspiracy theory called the Russia collusion scandal. And yet the same Justice Department is protecting Hillary Clinton from answering, what, 1, 2, 3 questions by Judicial Watch.
So this Justice Department, it's 2 years into the Trump presidency. This Justice Department has undergone a lot of turmoil, as in like people going in and out. Why are there people still there protecting Hillary Clinton 2 years into a Trump presidency, where we've had a Republican control the House, Senate, the presidency? What do you think needs to be done to make this stop and maybe see a little bit of justice done?
Well, one way to think about it is there's the Republican approach and then there's the Judicial Watch approach. The Republican approach is don't make waves. Oh, we don't want to prosecute Hillary Clinton because then people who are powerful in the Republican Party may get similarly prosecuted. Or we just don't want to make waves generally because we don't like the politics of scandal. It always comes back to bite Republicans. Judicial Watch has this approach is that because no one's above the law, when you have egregious violations of law, as was evident with Hillary Clinton, it's incumbent upon the government to do what the law requires and not to give her a special dispensation, a get-out-of-jail-free card, whatever you want to call it. Don't let her get away with it, because anyone else similarly situated wouldn't get away with it. And let's hope there's more of a Judicial Watch approach at the Justice Department. But in the meantime, we'll do the work. We're asking Hillary Clinton some questions. We have another judge, Judge Royce Lamberth, who is considering whether to allow us to bring Mrs. Clinton in and question her in person under oath.
Wow.
And which I'm sure will do a better job than others have in questioning her about the email issues.
So with this, what do you think the chances are this actually happens, where she comes in and answers?
Well, the facts and the law are on our side. The Judge Lamberth has already ruled that we can get discovery. Okay. The question is he going to bring Hillary Clinton in? He had a hearing. I think we had 4 Clinton email hearings in the last month. 4 Clinton email hearings.
Wow.
So as Congress is off campaigning, the Justice Department is harassing President Trump. We're doing the work on Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
And Judge Lamberth had one of these hearings, and he was very upset at the government because the State Department had messed with his court, gave him false information, and he was upset with Mrs. Clinton's participation in that scheme.
Wow. To switch topics a little bit here, but obviously we just had a midterm election, and election integrity becomes a big issue, as it often does in the midterms, and we saw the debacle that happened in Florida. What is Judicial Watch doing about that right now?
Well, it's funny. Judicial Watch was in Florida 18 years ago, in the year 2000, Bush versus Gore, trying to figure out what was going on as well. And Broward County and Palm Beach County were the center of the storm there. We saw evidence of fraud back then. And sure enough, Broward's back in the news again. Now, It looks like the fraud in this case wasn't enough to affect the outcome of an election, but maybe there were lower elections that were not, lower tier elections that we're not thinking about that were affected. I don't know. But Judicial Watch is on the ground in Broward trying to figure out what's going on. And we're not, now that Senator Scott, well, the incoming Senator Scott is one, the Republicans will go back and forget about it all. Judicial Watch doesn't forget about these issues. We continue to pursue election integrity issues and investigations. So we'll be investigating what went on in Florida to try to get some accountability to make sure that the next time things come around, elections are freer and fairer and cleaner. But we've highlighted the fact that the rolls need to be clean. They weren't clean in Broward. Broward County had too many people on the rolls, relatively speaking, who shouldn't be there, meaning they had been dead or moved away or otherwise, because the numbers showed they hadn't done reasonable cleanup efforts. So when you got dirty rolls, you can have suspicious outcomes, as what happened here. So we have this big case against California over its dirty rolls. We were successful in Ohio in cleaning up its rolls, and in Indiana. But people should know, and because the left is very much interested in this issue, because they don't like election integrity rules, because they want to be able to steal elections if necessary. They want to be able to find the votes anywhere they can, by hook or by crook. Mm-hmm. That's why they don't like voter ID. That's why they don't like citizenship verification. That's why they don't like efforts like Judicial Watch has undertaken to require states to follow the law and clean up the rolls. So they want to be able to steal elections if necessary. So we need voter ID, we need citizenship verification, we need clean election rolls, and we need to look at other reforms that make sure that the elections are being run in a way that people can have confidence that the outcome is accurate as opposed to stolen.
So we're down there in Florida, and Arizona obviously had its own problems. Was there any evidence, like hard evidence, that crimes have been committed that we can do anything about?
Well, in Broward County, they didn't publish the numbers as was required under the Florida law and Florida Constitution. So that's evidence of some type of corruption. In Arizona, it was interesting. We had uncovered in Maricopa County, which is a big county in Arizona. I think it's the county surrounding Phoenix, that about, I think it was 1,700, I don't have the number in front of me here, but 1,700 or so aliens had tried to register to vote. Now, it's not clear whether their registrations went through or whether they actually voted, but it shows you of the 140 or so thousand people who registered in Maricopa County, new voters, in January through September of 2018, this year, about 1% of them were aliens trying to register to vote. Now, the left would have you believe aliens aren't registering to vote and they're not voting. Well, these numbers suggest, at least in the least, that they're trying to register to vote, which is contrary to law.
So, with the whole thing that happened in Florida, Brenda Snipes obviously resigned from Broward County recently. Do you think there's any legal action that can be taken after, just so someone's held accountable? And it kind of seems like she's at the center of the storm in Florida here. I don't want to speculate, but...
Well, I mean, you raise a good point. That's why Judicial Watch is going to do its independent investigations. I hope Florida state authorities come in and do an audit, to put it charitably, what went on. And to the degree the federal government has jurisdiction here in terms of voter suppression or voters illegally voting or something like that, the feds should look into it as well.
Okay. So we've talked about a lot of topics here, election integrity, Mueller, Clinton. So with all of these issues and going forward to the other cases that are probably going to pop up, where does Judicial Watch go from here? What's next?
Well, our work is going to be even more essential than normal because Democrats are taking control of the House, which you would think has a big impact on us, but it really doesn't, because we do our work no matter what Congress is doing. Now, the House of Representatives, you had House members and a few committee chairmen like Devin Nunes be more aggressive and actually do some oversight. But it wasn't nearly as much as what needed to be done given the gravity of the situation with the deep state and the fact our government is largely out of control. Forget about the deep state, the government's just out of control. There's too much money being spent and no one knows how it's being spent. Yeah. So it's up to Judicial Watch to do this essential oversight work. We can't do it all, but it's going to be even more important because presumably the Democrats who oppose President Trump aren't going to be terribly interested in covering the allegations that their party, like the Democratic National Committee, was using Russia intelligence to try to get the FBI successfully and the DOJ successfully to spy on him. And they were working hand in glove with the Obama administration to launder dirt into the FBI and make President Trump's life miserable and legally difficult. So I have a feeling the House isn't going to be doing any more of those investigations. So it will make our Freedom of Information Act lawsuits and independent investigations all the more essential. So I know a lot of people are upset about the House being lost by Republicans. Well, actually, I don't know too many people who are terribly upset other than the people who lost. So, I mean, some public policy issues from a conservative perspective won't advance as a result of the House being controlled by Democrats. But in terms of anti-corruption investigations, it doesn't change anything Judicial Watch is doing. In my view, we were always the only game in town. We were doing things Congress wasn't doing, and it will even be more so, and our work will be even more important with the change of power in the House. But you know, if the House wants to do some good reforms on the Freedom of Information Act or some other reforms in terms of transparency, you know, we'd be happy to work with them. We've encouraged them to do that in the past, both Republicans and Democrats. So where necessary and where appropriate, we will work with liberals who, believe it or not, there are a lot of liberals who are concerned about government corruption as well. You have to separate people who have a liberal outlook from the hardcore activist organized left who only know about power politics and are willing to break the rules to achieve their results.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been incredibly enlightening, and thank you for walking through what we're doing, where we go from here, and thanks so much for joining us.
And you're welcome, Bruce. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Inside Judicial Watch. If you like this video and others, please subscribe. Please follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. Thank you so much, and have a happy Thanksgiving.